Hi, everybody.
Hello, everybody. So we got our regulars here today. So we are here today to talk about Syria. Confirm to me that my microphone is on because I just
Yes.
pushed a button. Okay,
Yep,
good.
it is. You're good to go.
Okay, okay. Um, so we're here today to talk about Syria and what we've done over the last 3 weeks. I was just talking with Azure here about how can't believe how time flies. I said that last time too, and now here we are already. Um, 3 weeks in Syria. It doesn't seem like it, but we did amazingly well as always. Not as always, but as usual. um, we've had a couple countries that we struggled with, but we did really well with Syria, and that just again I keep using the word amazing, but who would have thought, given the Arabic language and um, the lack of civil records and that, and the war going on and everything else, that we'd be able to make these connections quite as easily as we did. But we made 5 connections out of 15. That's
Awesome.
1/3, which is right up there with some of our best countries. I think the most we got was 8, if I remember right. But after that, our top countries were right around that number 5. So we're right there. Um, so we'll talk about Syria and what we did, and then we're also going to talk about our next stop, which I imagine most of our regular people are aware of by now because you knew to tune in this morning to my announcement, which I was not there to give. AON mentioned this morning that I had technical difficulties. That technical difficulty was that my alarm clock did not go off. So I slipped through this morning's announcement when I was supposed to announce our next stop. So I'm going to save that for halfway through the show today. But again, I know some of you probably are already very well aware of where we're headed next. Um, so anyway, so for Syria, we did. I'm pulling up my screen here. I had. Oh, I'm sorry. What I'd like to do is go over the 5 individuals that we did connect
Okay.
and just give a little bit of information. And we'll start our very first notable was Mariana Marash, and she was a poet. She was a feminist poet, which it's interesting if you go back over our past um, 11 countries prior to Syria. Actually, there are 10 prior to, I think Syria is number 11. Um, we have a lot of feminist poets on our list. They seem to be poets, not just feminist poets, but poets in general, but a number of feminist poets. And I think the reason for that, we don't have it so much in the United States right now, but I think during times of conflict, which we did have in the 60s and 70s, when we had our folk singers and who were basically poets. When you have countries that are in conflict, for some reason that you know, I'll leave that to others to analyze, but poetry becomes a way of expressing themselves. So a lot of these people that we have on our list that are poets tend to be writing during times of civil war, during times of revolution, um, or if not actual war, racial strife of some sort or another. So Mariana um, was one of those. She used to write for the during the what did they call it? The Arab Revolution, I guess they called it. Um, as did her 2 brothers. She had 2 brothers who were also notables, and also wrote during not the Arab Revolution, but rather the Arab Renaissance, they called it. And so there were three siblings that were all important writers. Her one brother went to England and France and was an Arabic writer in those countries. We're talking the late 1800s here. So he wrote for newspapers in England and France, but he wrote in Arabic. So that was kind of a unique thing at the time. And then another brother was a scientific, he was, I believe, a physician and wrote scientific papers and was very well known for that. So anyway, we got the three of them that were all notable. Um, but the difficulty then is now how do you take these notable Arabs um, and connect them to a profile that's already on WikiTree? And this was I actually had to write this down. Uh, this was quite a stretch for us. Oh, sorry, I gotta find my notes here. A little disorganized here. Um, she had, I don't know if you can pull up the connection to link.
Uh-huh.
Uh, yeah, that's probably the best way to illustrate what we had to do here. Um, now, I don't know how well people can see this, but if you pull up to her square up at the top.
Oh, okay. You want me to just okay.
Yeah, if you go up to the top of the screen.
Oh,
So
wow.
let's look at we've got her. So look at how many generations we've got written in Arabic here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and actually a seventh one that's in
Yeah.
semi-Arabic. But number 7 is Egyptian. Then we had to go through a bunch of private people. I'm not sure if it's because they were still living, which I'm assuming that's the reason. You got another 3 still living. Then you go back to Arabic again, another 2 private people until you get to number 14, um, when you finally get to the United States. So all of that was done in Syria and Egypt. I'm
Wow.
not sure exactly which one of our members did it. Um, and because it's all written in Arabic and private files, I can't go back and double check it to see the whole story. But when we get to number 14, we find the 1950 census, a 20-year-old young man working in a jewelry store in Maryland. So, and from there, we're able to make connections to, US profiles.
That's awesome.
So, but that's a pretty impressive connection that somebody made there. The combination of both Arabic language and private profiles.
Yeah.
Now that was one of our tougher ones. We talk a lot about how it's sometimes it's easier than you think it's going to be. This one I don't think was easier than you think it was going to be. Um, I do believe, from what I could tell, that a lot of this came from perhaps a published profile. I mean, a published biography. Or family history. Sometimes when you get these sorts of notables, particularly you've got 3 notables in the family, it's not just a notable individual, it's a notable family. There are published biographies.
Yeah.
They may be published in a foreign language. They may not be uh, widely available, but you can find them on Google Books or um, other places where you would find out of print, more obscure books.
Yeah, Hathy
Um,
Trust is another good one in the
yes.
Internet Archive.
Mhm. But from the little bit that I could interpret as I was reviewing this, I think that's probably, as opposed to having found actual Arab vital records or census records, those kinds of things. Um, Now, when I say Arab, the reason I'm not saying Syrian here is we're going back to a time when this was the Ottoman Empire. It wasn't necessarily Syria, so people were moving around. Um, a lot of the countries that we know of the Middle East weren't really created as political units, formal political units, until World War II. So when we're going back to the 1800s, Syria, Lebanon, other countries there were the boundaries were not quite as clear.
Right.
So these were Arabic speaking people. Um, the individuals that the 15 individuals that we use this time were born within what would today be Syria, but they traveled around, moved around more freely than they might today. So again, these moving from Syria to Egypt seemed to be a pretty common migration pattern for a lot of our for our notables. So if we want to go back to the main list of notables again, and we'll see who else we have here. This next one here, Soraya Tarzi, she was um, Syrian, but she married the king of Afghanistan. So we weren't doing Syrian research here, we were doing Afghani research. And because she married into the royal family, those records were available. Again, not traditional records necessarily, but we were able to connect a number of Afghani profiles and Afghani royals. So
Well, that's
even though
really
our focus was on
exciting.
Syria, we got some Afghanis up there as well now, which is another country that probably doesn't have a big profile on WikiTree at this point. So that was kind of a little added bonus. And then you'll see she actually died in Italy because, like a lot of these royal families,
In
they went into
exile.
exile at some point or another. So I don't know the whole story of the Afghani royal family, other than I know that they're not there anymore. So um,
Right.
she yeah, whether or not she was the final queen, she was the queen consort. I'm not sure or not.
Well, it's exciting that you were able to get those Afghani profiles connected as well.
Yeah, it's those are the surprises that just make it all really really exciting. It's you just don't know what you're going to uncover. Okay, so the next one on the list would be one of the things that's interesting here. You'll notice this one's name is Asmahan. She was a singer, but another woman. We connected our three female Syrians, which again, just from my own gut would have said that Syrian women would be harder to connect
Yeah,
than the
that's what
men.
I would think
You
too.
you just wouldn't think. First off, you wouldn't think you'd have a lot of famous um, Syrian women from the early 1900s and 1800s, um, and then to have the record so readily available. Now she's an interesting one because she was again a very famous singer, and but she died in a mysterious car accident in 1944, and there are still to this day rumors about um, how she died and why.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of conspiracy theories. She was connected with political figures, and sometimes when you're connected with political figures in some of these countries and you know too much, sometimes you don't live quite as long as you might otherwise. So, but who's to say? It could have just been an accident as it was reported, but we don't know. I'm not sure if you maybe if you want to check on her connected to, we could see um, if I yeah, so she was one. So if you look at the pictures here, her husband, so no, 'cause she was an actress. Her husband married a famous belly dancer. Um, my eyes are not quite good enough to read the name, but we'll just say a famous belly dancer. Her husband, I believe, was a film producer, filmmaker of some sort. Might have been an actor. And then his wife was also a famous, his second wife was also a famous belly dancer. And so they are all notables in and of themselves. Um, the the second wife, Samaya Mufuz, I believe Mafuz, she married Shepherd King, and he was an American. If you click on him, this would be number 5. So he was a wealthy individual from Dallas, Texas. Um, let's try to see if we have more bio on him. But let's go back to his wife. So let's go back to Samaya, and if we'll scroll down a little bit on her profile.
Oops.
So she traveled to the U.S. and performed in New York. In 1951, she met Shepherd King. He was a Texas millionaire, son of a wealthy Dallas family. He fell in love, divorced his wife, converted to Islam. married her in Cairo, and then they separated and divorced 2 years later.
Huh.
That was enough to get her connected to the tree.
Hmm.
So we find this also sometimes that she was from Egypt. She lived in Egypt most of her life. Um,
Oh
she
wait.
spent a couple years in the United States, married and divorced while she was here, but that was just enough to get her a connection to the global tree. Had she not made that little jaunt to the U.S., fallen in love, and gotten married, we'd still be searching for a connection. But sometimes that's all it takes. Sometimes it's these short little marriages. They were married for a year or 3 years,
Yeah.
but that's the spouse that gets us that connection. Okay, so let's see what do we have after that? Okay,
Another
Nazir
poet.
Kabani. I don't know a lot about him. I didn't follow up on his. He's also the national poet of um, Syria. Um, we don't have much of a biography here on him, so I did not have a chance to really get to look over his profile. But again, we've got another poet that um, is they when you look up, if you type in famous people from Syria on Google,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to find poets almost always. That's been my experience. Um, and then I believe we have one more. And this is Mustafa Akkad. Mustafa Akkad is a filmmaker, and he is responsible for the Halloween film series.
Oh, okay.
And he was from Syria. He moved to the United States and became a filmmaker. And he was a producer. He didn't direct the. Well, no, I don't know if he directed it, but he was a producer and a financial backer in particular of the Halloween series. Sadly, he was killed in a bombing in Jordan, he and his daughter,
Oh man.
back in 2005. So, we found a lot. I mentioned at the beginning of our Syria 3 weeks ago when we introduced Syria that as I was going through these famous people, the tragedies that they had to go through, just one after another. It really became depressing after a while
Yeah.
to read some of their stories because here's an individual highly successful. I believe he was at a hotel with his daughter, and it just exploded, and that was the end. And you'd find that over and over. If it wasn't them, it was a spouse, it was their parents, it was somebody that was killed, or um, the mysterious car accident, all these things that that's just life over there. Particularly when you're getting back into some of the I suppose it goes on today. Obviously, they've got conflicts now in Syria, but going back to the 50s, 60s, 70s, it hasn't let up in quite a long time.
Yeah.
But anyway, so he did a lot of his work and stuff in the United States, so we were able to make connections there.
Right through his wife, it looks like.
Yeah, his wife is still living. Why don't you click on her father and let's see where he was from? George Paul Shirk
Kansas.
from Kansas. Yeah. So again, I say this every time, but we start in Egypt, and before you know it, you're in Kansas. And so if people want to join in on future, we have 3 more countries remaining, plus Greece right now. Oh, I just gave away. um, Nobody heard that. We have, it's not all Egyptian or Syrian, research. We're researching in Kansas and Los Angeles and Maryland. So,
or
it's
England or Germany.
yeah,
I mean, it
or
can go
England, Germany,
anywhere.
France.
It
Yeah, I
just
mean, it's all
expands
over the place.
out.
We get a lot of people that end up in Australia and New Zealand. Um, and in some cases, we've even had, in some of our countries, they've ended up in Brazil and Argentina, South America. So they're all over the place. And then we got a little bit. We've got Bashar al-Assad, who's the current dictator, if you will, over there. We got a little bit on his family, but as usual, those foreign leaders are very private about their lives, so we did not get real far on his. I thought when we first started this project that the current leaders would be, they'd have all their information. You just Google it and it would be there. But it's really hard to find the information on many world leaders.
Right.
Um, we made some progress on some of the others. We've made family connections. We got some bios written. One of the things we really need help on going backwards is if anybody likes writing biographies, going all the way back to our first country in India, we've got a lot of connections and family members attached, but a lot of our notables are still lacking good biographies, readable biographies. So if you're
And
interested in doing that,
is
yeah,
there
go
a
ahead.
maintenance category for those? They're easy to find?
Well, if you go to our main page for the 15 Nations tour,
Uh-huh.
all of the pages are still linked there, and if
Okay.
you and you can still get to the individual pages there. I am in the process of developing a combined page where all the we'll have two, one for all the successes we've had, and then one for the individuals that we've not connected. So they'll be all on one page, but that is
Nice.
not up and running yet. That'll be up after we conclude with our 15 nations. But yeah, we've got we have about a 33% success rate in connections. That's one third, almost exactly. I think when we hit our 120th notable, we had 40 of them connected.
Wow.
So that was exactly one third. And then we've gone up from there. So I'm not sure what the percentage is now, but it's almost exactly a third,
Yeah,
which
I know
again, consider, go
you
ahead.
mentioned on the last one that some of the previous ones have been connected now that were unconnected. They're now connected.
Well, this is real interesting because, when we started in India, we had no idea what we were doing. We still go into each country having no idea what we're doing with that country. But we've learned as a team, we've learned some really solid skills, I think, on what to do when you don't know what to do. And we've had members now go back to India and some of the other countries and make connections that we weren't even close to making when we were there. But now we go back and it's not as hard. It's kind of, I compare this a lot of times to doing things like crossword puzzles or other types of puzzles, and you start out with simple puzzles, and over time you start doing more and more complex puzzles. Um, and you go back to those puzzles in the beginning that used to seem really hard, but they're not so hard anymore because you now know how to do, the tricks of the puzzles or Sudokus or whatever it happens to be. And this is
Right.
kind of the same idea. Each one of these, it's kind of like a brain game, but we've learned some skills on how to figure out what we don't know that we didn't have in the beginning. And again, I say that as a team, not just as individuals. I think together we've figured things out, and now we go back to India and we say, how did we not catch this in the first place, or why didn't we know how to do that? But back then we really didn't know what we're doing. Now we just sort of don't know what we're doing. Um,
You leveled
but
up.
but yeah, and another thing that you know we are only in these countries for 3 weeks. And even though people are free to go back and continue to work on, we tend to move forward after the 3 weeks. If we had 6 weeks, 8 weeks, we could probably accomplish a whole lot more. Um, but because we move on to the next thing, there's probably leads and stuff that we don't get to because we just the 3 weeks is up, and we all have other lives and things to do and Olympic games to participate in and things
Yeah.
like that going on. So, um, we don't always get around to maybe
Well, and
completing
they're ready
everyone.
then for people who do come along and make
So they're
connections
they're
later
they're
on.
gonna stay there. I mean, they're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So, if somebody wants to come by a year from now and work on them, they're gonna be there. Um, but we'll try to, get a page up so that it isn't just, if you happen to come across them, there'll be a location you can go and see what needs to be worked on, and
That's great.
we'll see what we can do. So, for those of you that weren't paying attention a few minutes ago when I revealed the secret for the second time, which is not a secret because it was revealed this morning, but here we are in Greece. We are in Greece in honor of the WikiTree Summer Games. Um, we are not allowed to call them what we might otherwise call them for copyright reasons. So they are our summer games. But our torch is now in Greece, which is apropos to the history of the modern games. And we are going to meet 15 widely diverse individuals, but 3 of our individuals have a direct um, Olympics connection. Um, so we will go down this list, and I am going to have a really interesting time saying these names out loud. If you've ever had to pronounce uh, Greek names, they're not that difficult. There's just a lot of syllables. Evangelos Zappos. He is considered the founder of the modern Olympic Games. Now, I made a little bit of an exception with him. Why don't we open up his profile
Okay.
just so I can explain to our regular members why he's there? He was born in the Ottoman Empire, what was then Albania, and he died in what is now Romania. So he's not technically Greek, but he is considered a Greek hero because he is the founder of the Olympic Games. And, he did live for a time in Greece. Um, Generally, my rule is I only pick people that were born in that country. But because we're on the Olympic Games, because he is an Olympic hero, I mean, Greek hero, um, and really one of their probably their greatest. I don't know if you call them a folk hero, but national heroes. Um, I went ahead and included him, but he technically wasn't born or died in Greece. So he will be, like I said, I don't know if we'll find records in Albania. I don't know if we'll find him in Romania, or if he lived long enough in Greece that we'll have records there. So that'll be interesting to see where that one takes us.
But being
Okay,
the
if we go,
founder of the modern games, there's probably a lot of history written about.
I'm imagining there is. He's very famous historically, and not only in Greece but in the sporting world, and just in general.
Yeah.
And we also have Demetrius Vikalis. He is the first president of the International Olympic Committee. So Zappos was more of a financial backer. He negotiated with the king to get the games initiated. So he was more prominent in terms of coming up with the idea and getting people motivated, etc. Whereas Demetrius Vikalis was actually the first person placed in charge of the games. So also a very key player, and he is actually Greek. So um, now this one I'm going to have a little trouble pronouncing, but I'll say Eleftherios Venizelos. He is the maker of modern Greece. Um, he was a prime minister, politician, but he really is the one. Greece obviously has been around a very long time, um, but modern Greece didn't come around until more recently, late 1800s, what we would consider the nation of Greece today. Um, Similar boundaries, same name, but a very different country than it was historically. So he was the one who really modernized the government and brought it into kind of a um, um,
Into the modern era, basically.
we'll say, yeah, we'll say modern era. I was going to say 20th century. Uh, um, then Spiridon Lewis. He was a water bearer who participated in the first Olympic Games. Now, what people maybe don't realize is that when the Olympic Games started, they really had no idea that it was going to take off and be here, 150 plus years later, and have the the worldwide recognition that it has today. In the early games, the athletes didn't even necessarily know they were participating in Olympic Games. They were
Oh.
just told to come on to, you know, come. We're having a tournament. Come participate. Um, so they didn't see themselves as Olympic, um, superstars, et cetera, that we have today. They also didn't give gold, silver, and bronze medals back then. They had, first, second, third place, but um, Spiridon Lewis would have been the first gold medal winner had they given gold medals at the time. So he's really the first Olympic champion, you could say, um, but he never actually got a gold medal. Now the Olympic Committee has gone back and posthumously awarded medals to these individuals, so they are considered medal winners, but they didn't actually win them at the time. But he is a hero in Greece for having been their um, first Olympic champion. But he was just a water bearer who could apparently run well and participated in the marathon and won, and then went home, and that was the end of his career. But his name lives on. Um, okay, another difficult one. Nikos Kazantzakis. He was an author who wrote Zorba the Greek and The Last Temptation of Christ. So he has some very well-known novels. He has a number of others that I was not as familiar with, but very, very prominent author. We have Georgios Papanikolaou. Probably didn't say the second half of that right, but I got the first half because he is the inventor of the pap smear. He was a cancer doctor. This was early 1900s, and the reason it's called the pap smear, the full name is the Papanikolaou smear, but people call it pap for short. So he was also much of his career was in the United States, so we may be able to find records for him in American records. Um, Giorgio did Chirico. He was an artist. I don't know much about him. He was influential at the Surrealist. Couldn't tell you much more about him. I did not get to do a lot of research on his full biography. I have here Katina, but I think it's Katrina. I think I left an R out. It's Katrina Paxanow. She was an Academy Award-winning actress. She won a Best Supporting Actress award. I forget the name of the movie that she was in. I don't know if you could pull up her profile. Double check her name there. Yeah, it says Katina there too, but For Who the Bell Tolls. So,
Oh, it looks like the first name is
Caterini. Yeah, I'm going to double check the spelling on that, but I've been saying it as Katrina, but maybe it is Katina. But I'll double check it. That's easy to find out. Actually, if you scroll down, we can see what her wiki. There should be a WikiTree. I mean, a Wikipedia link there.
Yeah, so it does say Katina.
It is Katina. Okay. I thought I messed up. Apparently, I didn't. Okay, and so she's an Academy Award-winning actress and did not have a profile on WikiTree, so that surprised me. Odysseus Alapudelis, Nobel Prize-winning poet, another poet. We have Melina Mercouri. She was also an Academy Award-winning actress. She also did not have a profile on WikiTree. These are both supporting actresses. I believe all of the Best Actress winners. No, I take that back. I know that Shelley Winters is not. Um, oh, she may be a Best Supporting Actress too. I think all of the Academy Award winning actors and actresses are connected. I'd have to double check that, but I knew that at one point. Mikis Theodorakis. He is a composer who scored the movie Zorba the Greek, which was coincidence that I'd picked the author previously of Zorba the Greek. All the soundtracks for Z and Serpico.
It'll be interesting to see if there's a connection between the
If
two.
there's a connection, yes. Yeah, because when I picked them, I just knew one was an author and one was a composer, and then I found out that one composed the music to the other one's book. So that was interesting. Um, Theo Angelopoulos, he's an internationally acclaimed filmmaker. I was not familiar with any of his movies. I think they're mostly probably done in Greek, but he has won awards at all kinds of film festivals and stuff. So in the international community, he's well known. But personally didn't recognize the names of any of his films. And then the final one is Vangelis, who is a composer, wrote Chariots of Fire. He is a individual I'm very familiar with. I used to have one of his record albums when I was a kid. I loved his early music. And Chariots of Fire, when that was, I don't know if that was probably the '80s. That was a really big hit music at the time. Won the Academy Award. So we've got a variety here. Um, Greek is a European country, so from that end, it may be a little bit easier than some of our countries, but it's also not a historically English speaking country. They do speak Greek there. So we'll see how easy it is to find records and to translate them and to um, get some connections made. I would imagine we'll probably have more family immigrating elsewhere into Europe than we might have some of our further away countries. But that's just my guess. We did not have as easy a time with our other European countries, Estonia and Ukraine, as I might have thought we would. So we'll see um, where Greece fits in. Greece also has, it's there kind of on the border with the Middle East, so you probably have a lot of people moving that direction as well. So
Right.
it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, this is exciting. Can't wait to see what you guys come up with in another 3 weeks. They go so quick, it seems.
They do. They go so fast now. Um, and for those that did not tune into Bingo last Friday, as I encouraged everyone to do, but I'm not sure how many listened to me. But we did have an announcement back then that we are going to do a permanent global project following the 50 Nations tour. It'll follow the same basic format, but rather than having monthly or every 3 week challenges like we do, we'll have stationary pages for every country in the world. And we are looking for people to help us set that up. If anybody has a country they would like to sponsor, we basically have templates. We'll create a page for you, and then you can help us fill in all the details, write a little bit of history, look up the demographics as I do, very similar to the pages that we have set up for our 15 Nations tour. We've had quite a few people express interest in different countries, but we have to hope to have all 197 recognized nations up by the end of the year. Many of them will have active projects already, so we're not messing with those countries. But for all those that don't, like I said, we'll hopefully have at least a stationary page for each country, and then for people that are interested in creating projects for various countries, we'll have opportunities for that as well. So
Now, will
that's
you
something we're looking
guys be? Yeah, that's really exciting, and I love the fact that so many people have shown interest and stepped up. That
Mhm.
was just really cool to hear. Will you guys be creating when you create those pages for each country? Will you also be setting up like the basic categories for maintenance, like Egypt needs biography or Egypt needs sourcing, so
So
that people can add
yes.
things to them?
So what's going to happen is we're going to have we will have a page with a list of every country in the world, and there will be a link to that website. Um, if somebody or a team of people wants to create it into a project, they can do that, and then they can work with the categories team to set up the categories that work for them.
Right.
Um, we're not going to go in and create
The
10
category
different categories
structure.
for
Yeah.
197 countries that
That's a
are
lot
never
of
going to be
work.
used.
Yeah.
But, um, but yeah, that'll be up all of that once a group or individual takes over leadership of a country, they'll work under our global project, but they will have a lot of flexibility to then develop the country as they want. The templates work to some degree, but every country is different. So
Yeah.
once a
They need to
team
be
takes over, they'll
modified.
know. Yeah, they'll know what the needs are, and we don't want to do a lot of work on countries that nobody's ever going to visit and express an interest in. That's not the best use of our time, but we'll get it up there. And then, like I said, and you'd be surprised at how many people have picked countries that I would have to look on an atlas to figure out where they are because they're not all picking the most obvious choices. People have their tiny countries that they're particularly interested in. Maybe they have family from there. Maybe they just have, a personal interest for one reason or another. But they're not all picking the biggest, most obvious,
That's really
nations.
exciting.
Yeah.
Very, very
So
cool.
that's something. And right now we don't have a G2G post or a space page active. So if you're interested in it, you can drop me a personal email. Let me know what country or countries you're interested in, or if you just have country questions, go ahead and ask. But the best way is just to send direct email to me, and I can answer you one on one.
So I'm just gonna drop your profile into the comment here in the chat so that people know where to go to get a hold of you. Hopefully, you'll get some more people interested in taking on some more countries. That'd be great.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that have an interest in doing something like that, but don't know where to begin. Don't
Yeah,
know,
just to help it
you give 'em
facilitate it, get started.
yeah, you give them a blank free space page, and, they're not quite sure what to do with it, so we'll get that all up, and like I said, we have a template, and we'll get everything going for you, and we can kinda walk you, step by step and take you by the hand through it, and again, it'll all be under the global project, so there'll be people to help you out if you get stuck on something, and all it takes is one person to have a project. You don't have to have a team. Teams are great, um, but you don't need to bring 5 people along with you. That's not a requirement. We'll just get you up there, and we'll get you out on G2G, and hopefully people will find you to be. I think we're often surprised how many people have the same obscure interests that we have. You just have to find them,
Yeah,
and here you
and
are.
that's it too. Getting that page created, and
Mhm.
that'll be anybody searches for genealogy Syria.
Mhm.
WikiTree will start showing up more and more, and the more we share that out to social media, talk about it, that'll help people know to WikiTree for that.
And it is a global community, so don't be surprised if you do decide to start up a project that you may get people who are actually from those countries that have nowhere else to do their own research. We found that when we did our Argentina stop, we had 4 or 5 individuals from Argentina that um, joined us on that. So, and we've had one or two here and there. I think we had somebody from Estonia that was participating, and we've had a few others that were not necessarily in the country at the time, but had lived in the country at some point or another. So you get a wide range of people that,
We'll collaborate with
you
you.
know,
That's awesome.
yeah, so
Oh, looks like there's a couple comments.
okay, I don't
Jared
have my
was
comments up, but Yeah, he had a good story. Again, I have to kind of go through these really quick. I get bogged down. These interesting stories slow me down from doing my job of getting the project pages up. So I sometimes have to stop myself and not get too engrossed in the stories.
Fall
But
down the rabbit hole.
but yeah, he was one that just kind of an everyday person who's made his claim to fame.
That's cool. Jamie is saying she loves that sort of.
Constantinople. Yeah. They're not, if you say them a couple times, they're not, they pretty much are pronounced just like they're spelled. But it's a lot of letters.
Yeah,
So I have
I had a Greek pen pal when I was a kid.
to,
Yeah, so
yeah,
that was really interesting.
but it's like Snuffleupagus. That's a, I'm sure, a Greek name.
Yes.
But yeah, they can be a little intimidating to look at, but you just sound them out and you say them a couple times and they start to roll off your tongue pretty easily.
Yeah.
Yeah. I imagine it's tough as a kindergartner learning to spell your name, but
Yes, it was very hard for me to say my name when I was a kid. Oh,
um, so let's see, what else do we have? You don't have my, let's see here. Um, yeah, so if we want to go down
list
the
again?
top the actual narratives here, the history and stuff. Um,
Oh, okay.
this is something that we're going to have when we do our global tour. This is why I think it's important to have a page for every country. Um, this is not an encyclopedia. You're not going to get, um, an entire history of the country on this one page. But each one of these things, what I try to put in here is just enough information to be useful to the team um, in doing their research. So, what kinds of religions might you be looking at? What languages might you have to deal with? What ethnic groups are you going to be working with? So, for example, when we're talking about the history of the country, I don't talk too much about the current government, what's going on now, because that's not what we're doing. We're not dealing with modern politics. We're dealing with history. So, what I'm going to give you is, um, how did the country come about? What different eras would you be looking at, so that when your notable was born? Was it during the time of revolution? Was it during the monarchy? Was it when we were in Ukraine? You have the Soviet period, and then you have the Russian period with the czars before that, and that makes a difference on how your people lived and how they interacted with their community. The one thing that I find is really interesting with almost all of our notables when you're reading their stories, how their individual and family stories overlap with the national story.
Mm,
So I haven't done much research on Greece yet, but I know, for example, when we were in India, we had a number of people that were living on the Indian Pakistani border when those two nations split. That used to be one country. They divided it, and people had to make a choice between which country they were going to live in.
right.
And in some of our notables, half their family crossed over to the border of the Pakistani side. The other half lived stayed in India, and they were basically permanently broken apart at those points. So, but these were just regular families. But the politics
Defined
played
what
a
happened.
played a
Yeah.
definite role in their family history. So for a lot of these, when you've got World War II comes in, and um, not only the Jewish population but other ethnic groups that are moved. Well, here's something that we'll find in Greece, and I'm going to draw a blank on what it was called, but they did a population swap and they had a large Muslim country in the north. And at one point, they did a swap. I believe it was with Turkey, if I remember right. I could be wrong there. But they sent their Muslim population over to the other country, and that other country sent their Christian population to Greece,
Hmm.
and they just swapped people.
Hmm.
And again, I didn't read much about that, but I read a little bit, and it's a really, again, really fascinating
Very
piece of
interesting.
history that I didn't
Yeah.
know. But that's going to play a role, if your family or if your notable had family that was involved in that.
Right.
Um, that's going to play a role in where you find the records and either where they originated or where they ended up. Um, so I think I have that put in here somewhere, right about where you are. You scroll down just a little bit further.
Oh, there it is. Population
Yeah.
transfer.
Yeah, so that was 1923, Greece and Turkey. I was correct, it was Turkey. 500,000 Muslims from Greece,
Wow.
predominantly those defined as Turks, but also Greek Muslims, were exchanged with approximately 1.5 million Greeks from Turkey. So today, only about 1% of Greece is still Muslim. But yeah, that's a piece of history I was never aware of, and that's I just don't know how logistically you do that. I don't know how much force was used. I don't know.
Hmm.
Did they just exchange house by house? You get this house in exchange for their house, or where these people, 500,000 people, stayed when they crossed over into the other country?
Yeah, it's quite a difference. 500,000 for 1.5 million.
Yeah,
3 times as many Greeks from Turkey.
yeah. So that again, that's the kind of thing that could very well play a role in where we're going to find our records. So that's the kind of
Right.
stuff that I put into you know, um, these little synopsises here. Um, and
Very
again,
helpful.
this was all part of the Ottoman Empire for a long time. So whether the records were kept in Greece or whether they're kept in Turkey or where they ended up, that's a question we're going to have to figure out. And they've only been a democracy since the 1970s. There was a king in there, Prince Philip, Queen Elizabeth's husband, was
Right.
a Greek prince. So the Greek royal family was very prominent, and the family's still in existence. And there was been talk off and on of bringing them back. Those things come up in most of the former monarchies from time to time.
Right.
Um, for the most part, the monarchy is not allowed to return to their home country because they are afraid that
Right.
something will get stirred up. And um, so I'm not sure where all the Greek royals are today,
Huh.
but they are still out there. I know a number of them are intermarried into other royal families.
Right.
So not a uh, huge expert on royal families, but I do know that I would say of the former monarchies, the Greeks are probably still the most prominent because they're all cousins.
Yeah.
All the royal families there. Um,
All right.
all right, so if anybody has any questions, I will have it. Oh, as I always say, I will be opening up the page tomorrow with a G2G chat, but if you want to go on before well, I'll be providing the link tomorrow, but I will open up the page today. It may already be open, but if not, I'll open it up today. To get there, just go to any of our other um, country pages and just change the name to Greece up in the address bar, and
Yeah,
it'll
and
take you there.
I shared it in the comments in
You
the
have one there
chat,
in the comments. Okay.
and then I have one in the description of the video too. There's a
Okay.
link there. So
But always, if you want to jump from one country to the other, just change the name in the address bar, and it'll take you there. They otherwise have the same URL.
That's really nice that you can just change that end part of that.
Yeah, and we will be doing that with the global project. So once we get all 197 countries up, other than the ones that already have, like the Germans and the French that already have their pages, but all the other ones will all have the same address other than the name of the country. And Jamie's asking about the Bulgarians being part of that. I think it had to do more with religion than nationality. So if the Bulgarians were Muslim, I think the idea was to remove the Muslims from northern Greece, more so than it was about the nationality. But if those Bulgarians, if they were in that area and they were Muslim, then I would imagine they were expelled right along with them.
Well, this is really exciting. I can't wait to see what you guys
Okay.
do.
So, yeah, I appreciate everybody checking in with us. And we're going to be splitting our time, some of us, between the Olympics, which don't or the Summer Games, which actually don't start officially till next week.
This weekend.
So this will give us this weekend. Yeah,
Friday.
it'll be this
The
weekend,
Wiki
Friday.
Games.
Yeah,
The Wiki
and
Games.
but also, like we said, we've got a couple Olympians here, so we can get started on those if you got the Olympic spirit a little early, and we'll see what we can do. I think this one's gonna be a pretty successful one.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us,
Okay.
and make sure to tune in to the kickoff for the sourcing slalom on Friday this week at 8 a.m. Eastern. We'll see you then.
Okay. Bye.